140 pounds on their back. Now it's not 140 pounds on orbit, but it still has the mass of that. And so literally when they said when they were kangaroo hopping, because Buzz Aldrin says it's not bunny hopping, it's kangaroo hopping, they literally had to plan where they were going to stop because it takes them a little bit of time to stop. That's why they're falling over so much. Their center of gravity is way off from where they want to be, and we'll show you that again later. When they're trying to push up, it's not the weight, it's the CG that they've got wrong, and there is mass to it. It's like you could push a dumpster around, which couldn't pick it up. You know, it's the mass of it. So, and these spacesuits, one of them's talking later about it, getting a hole in it and might die. They're like multi-layers of Kevlar, and all, I mean, it's called multi-layer insulation blanket, MLI blanket. So it's pretty tough, and in fact, it's designed to be able to catch like a baseball glove, to like catch a small micrometeor without it going through it, penetrating it, kind of like a bulletproof vest. Nobody that I know of, no spacesuit's ever been hit by a micrometeor that I know of, but I have had payloads that come back, and there was some scratches on one, and everybody's looking through all the video to find out who did it, and turns out it was a micrometeor impact. So. All right, does anybody know why we're here today? This stuff means there's 71 charts. That's why I put an S there. 71 charts? Why would I put an S? I can't spell. You can see that I did work on this last night. All right, so I'm gonna get cranking here a couple minutes early. So there's 5 missions, and I've got to do what I did for Apollo 11 for 5 times and go fast. I'm just gonna kind of hit the highlights of each one. If you don't see something, it wasn't anything spectacular. It was 3 days of sitting there in the chair doing shaving and doing things like that. All right, so running across, this is, my wife said she liked this one too. This is everybody who's been to the moon, almost. We got the first crew, Apollo 8. They went around the moon. It was kind of a stunt a bit. They didn't have a limb, so it was just to see if we could get around the moon. They're the first manned mission around the moon, not the first crewed mission. And then these are, so Apollo 10's the one that went down and landed. Apollo 13 had the accident and couldn't land, so these guys went around but weren't allowed to land. And these are the guys that stayed on orbit for support, like Michael Collins, Evans, all these, and these are the guys that got to go down and play in the dirt and fall all over themselves. So anyway, so that kind of gives you a story, but there was one crewed mission for a picture. Who was the crewed mission? And just guess, because you're not going to get it. What country was it?
Okay, who said Russia? We'll just go ahead and give you one.
All right. Russia. I don't know how to get it to you. Where's my runner? Here, we got a new runner here. So why was it Russia? Well, we were in a space race. Go ahead. Oh, you want the picture? You actually won it, huh? Tortoises, space tortoises. Boris Gopher and Victoria Boxer. And I would fact check that I were you. They did send 2 turtles up there. They did not fare well at the end, by the way, but they were the first ones to crewed mission, so not really people, but I don't care. They were the first one to go around the moon. So we tried to go, when they landed in the Indian Ocean, we were almost there. We were going to go steal it from the Russians, but somebody stopped us. All right, so let's jump into this. Apollo 12 is the first mission after 11. They got to the moon, a successful mission, but they did have a rocky start. Their goal was to try and land next to something called Surveyor 3. It's funny that we go all the way to Mars to see something that we made on Earth and look at Mars. We go all the way to the moon, but we did it on Mars too. First thing we did after getting one prospector out there was go look at the heat shields. I'm like, okay, if we're gonna come all this way to look at something, we could just save the money and look at it back in town. So the commander of the mission is Pete. He gets to go down, and Alan Bean, a friend of mine, Phil Metzger, which I'll talk about later, went and did an interview with him. So don't move the laser so fast. All right, so it wasn't a night launch. This is an animation, but I wanted to show it because of what happens.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running. Commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff. 22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
triggered lightning. I've worked expendable launch vehicles, and when lightning hits a rocket, it's a bad day. There were a few choice words being passed around there I don't notice, but it might be appropriate, I don't know. All right, so this is actually a real lightning shot. Again, making it up. This is the guy running the mission control, and he's like, what the heck just happened? What's going on is in the control room, they have lost all data. So they are getting no data on the ground, and they're the ones that are trying to help them figure out what's going on, but they don't have any data to look at. They've lost something called their auxiliary power unit. They take hydrogen, oxygen, mix it together. They've lost both of those. They're running on a little battery. Their main computer is down. They're running on the descent computer. It's a really bad day. However, the vehicle seems to be flying perfectly with these two triggered lightnings. So these master alarms are going off all over the place because the battery is too small and it's really drawing the voltage down, which is making everything go ring, 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 all the phones ring, and their guidance system is bleeping out, and Pete Conrad there's probably a few more choice words in here that I left out, something about, never mind. Anyway, everything's dropped out. Now they do have some visualization inside the capsule to see what's going on. They can tell that their APUs are running, they have no power, their computer's down, they've jumped over the backup. But this is what their guidance system looks like on board. And I spent like all night animating this. Okay, not really. But they say their altitude navigation system is just flipping all the, they have no guidance. But the first stage is just, 7.5 million pounds of thrust. It is so beefy and so strong that it's like, I'm flying straight anyway. Kind of like if you let go of the helm of your car, at least go straight for a little bit, right? So that's what's going on right now. And everything's trying to figure out what's going on. And this guy, this spooky smart guy, he even looks spooky smart. He figures out what's going on, Aaron. So he found out, hey, just from looking at his no data, and he's like, we don't lose all the data. We have chunks of the data fall out. We miss sensors and stuff. But we lose all the data. What's the common point? And it's something called a signal conditioner. And he says, it's a signal conditioner. So he starts calling up there saying, hey, it's the signal conditioner. We need to get that to the auxiliary one. They've got a backup. Not like we don't plan things to happen, but he's got a backup one. But nobody inside knows what he's talking about in the crew capsule. He's kind of breaking protocol by going straight to the guy talking to the crew, or talking straight to the crew to get them the information, because this is a bad thing. The vehicle's kind of flying by itself. There is the third stage can fly by itself for a little while. So he's trying to get them to think, and this is what they're looking for, this signal conditioner from normal to auxiliary. They need to throw the switch. Al Bean pops up and says, I know what you're talking about of the three of us in here, and they kept getting the acronym confused, which wasn't helping any. So they finally got it picked over, and everything turned back on, and within 2.5 minutes, they started turning on the APUs back to the normal computer. And before they went and did their translunar burn, they checked everything before they go into the moon to make sure everything was back. The only thing they couldn't check, which is never mentioned of again, is the return parachutes. And they basically made the decision like, look, you're either going to come down now or you're going to come down after the moon. So we'll figure that one out later, because there's no sense in not going to the moon, right? Because the odds are the same. Nice color, black and white there. All right, so we make it to the moon, no real problems, everything's getting down. We got Pete Conrad running around on the moon, he's happy to be there. They did a very close pinpoint landing to the Surveyor 3 that they're looking for. And I'll show it to you in a second. And his first words were, ooh, this is nice and soft and squishy, this is neat. Not quite a Neil Armstrong quote, but memorable in its own way. So he's the third man on the moon, and then Al Bean's going to be number 4. They always let these guys go out and run around. And every time they go out, they have to learn how to walk. It's totally different, and they warned them. So that they've got their experiments deployed. I think this is somewhere around 400 pounds, but it's 1/6. And so they got this T-bar, and for some reason, the commander is not the one doing all the work. It's always the pilot doing all the work. This is Al Bean, my friend, and I'm just going to jump ahead and show you him. Phil Metzger looks like he's a PhD, doesn't he? Went to high school with him, talked with him. So he went to go interview Al Bean about the Surveyor, and he didn't want to talk to him because he paints now. So one of the things that he does in his paintings is he took his patches off of his moon uniform, and they allowed him to keep them, and he wanted to get some moon dust to put on each painting, but they're not going to give that to him. And so he figured out that, hey, these patches probably have moon dust on them. And so if you ever buy one of these, you're probably going to pay a lot for it, and it's probably got moon dust. This is Alvin. Here's the Intrepid over here. That's what they came down on. I'll back it up. Shortly, Apollo 14 Antares is going to land not too far away, and they're going to actually be able to see it 12 over the horizon there. They don't go there, but this is the Surveyor here, and you can kind of see this is Apollo 14, 12, and Surveyor. They're kind of not too far apart from each other. And Mr. Dr. Phil Metzger, who's one of the top 3 planetary scientists in the United States, because there are only 3. So I was talking with him, and he said literally the engines sent out the dust underneath them it hit this and sandblasted it. It also hit the command support module on orbit. There's no gravity, there's no air to slow it down. So it doesn't slow it, just keeps going. But gravity will eventually, excuse me, I'm going to shoot somebody, are you dead? Are you blind? It eventually arcs back in, it hits the ground. But dust was a real problem. Come on. So this is the piece they took off, and I called him and said, hey, did you get to? Yeah, he said he had that in his office for like 3 years. Dr. Phil Metzger, great guy. So sorry. So they like to play jokes on either, and so Dave Scott decided they would draw pictures on their procedures, these procedures right here, and so this one got stuck on there. It's something about somebody at the Month Club, and they didn't really notice, but what happened was they saw these pictures, and you know what I'm talking about, they started laughing because they couldn't say anything about it on the comm, because the whole world's listening, and they thought their oxygen mix or something was wrong, and they thought it was a problem, and they finally called and said, what's going on? And they said, well, we'll tell you later. But when he did this picture, he didn't know it fell down to that one, so this is like the first picture of that kind of thing on the moon, and that's the end of that conversation. So I'm gonna go home tonight, so not very far. So where did all this dust come from? What is all this dust? How does this get there? So I'm gonna give a picture to somebody who can answer that without reading the charts. It took me like 2 weeks to come up with an answer. So, all right, well, you answer the question. So here you go. I'm sorry if somebody else answered it. Come see me and I will give you something. A cold, maybe. So it turns out that I just stepped on something I shouldn't step on. Turns out that at one time there was a lot of volcanic activity on the moon, and lava covered the world like water. But it's hard. And so where did the dust come? There's 30 feet of dust, and it came from micrometeor impacts and meteor impacts. There's nothing to weather this stuff, so it stays incredibly sharp, like glass. Who's walked over a lava field and I'm not giving you a ticket for that? I mean, if you fall on a lava field, that's pumice. It's really, really bad. But it's harmful to breathe. It can short out equipment. It can do all kinds of things. And when they finally decided to go from the limb into the command module, they went kind of, that's al fresco, the right word. They left everything in the module, so they didn't bring any of that in with them. And they still brought stuff in. So they have filters and stuff in there to take care of that. So this is what it looks like close up. And you can see every little meteor, no matter what size it is, there's no atmosphere, it hits the ground. So when you're walking around up there, this represents the 30 feet underneath it of thousands and thousands of meteor impacts over a period of 1 billion years since it's been there, being pummeled by, what was it? Meteors and asteroids. There we go. See, I should give you one other picture. So I just quoted you all that stuff, so we'll skip that. So
It's for 2024 while you're still an increased risk that the same asteroid could strike something else and release a fairly sizable amount of energy, specifically our moon.
So this is what's happened, all this dust, that's what made it. And you can see the potholes that are around. I think this video was actually talking about an asteroid called 2024. It's now got one named Apocalypse. It was what's it called? Apophis. The Egyptian god of meteor death. Anyway, so they've since recalculated, and it's going to come basically between the Earth and the Moon's orbit. So when that happens in 2029, we will probably get to see it. There is a possibility that it will hit the moon. And if it does hit the moon, it's going to throw up a lot of stuff, and there's going to be a lot of meteor showers and everything. So this is relevant, so it's good to play it. So I don't know why I'm showing that picture. It's cool. Oh, lots of dust. All right, so they eventful return, no big problem. They get back and they land upside down, but they have these riding balloons. About 30% of them ended up upside down. And just as some things, it was a pretty hard landing, and there was a camera up top, broke loose and hit Al Bean in the head. He got 6 stitches for that. It's not really an award in the Pacific Ocean. I don't know what that B's for. So this is it going up to Virginia, to the Air and Space Museum that they have up there in Virginia, which is kind of near Dulles Airport. If you ever get a chance to go, it's a no-brainer. And so we're going to jump to 14 because there's a whole movie about 13, and yeah, everybody's done that one to death. So we got Stuart Rosen here, and we got this guy, first man in space. He had something called Meniere's disease, and they wouldn't let him fly anymore, so he went over to some foreign country or someplace where they had experimental surgery. Who's the doctor? Okay, I'm having a heart attack. Who's the doctor? So I thought it was something like, you know, kids have tubes put in their ears or something like that, but I don't think so. Anyway, he got it fixed, and promptly, as the lead astronauts, put himself on Apollo 13, and then everybody suggested, hey, why don't you just go on Apollo 14? Good choice, by the way. And then we got Mitchell, and yeah, we got everybody. And there too, we got Kitty Hawk and Antares, so that's their vehicles. And here's a bigger picture of them. Now they started putting red stripes on them so you could tell who they were walking around the moon. Kind of brilliant, don't you think? Shuttle has more than just red. So this is the Columbia module, but this is the support module, the command module, and right now we're going to focus in on this. This is called probe, and that's how they dock up with, where you at, dock? They dock up with the drogue right here. And so this is where they go back and forth, so it's actually pretty big. This is Antares, and you can see there's a lot of crinkling of metal there because they slammed into it 6 times to try and get this thing to connect. And so, you know, after this, on the 6th try, they're like, they hit the thrusters. It's like, no more of this soft stuff. We're going home, but unfortunately, at this point, if the 3rd stage has already done their translunar burn, they're on their way to the moon, so they're gonna have to go around, but they're not gonna get their prize. And the 6th time, 2 of the 3 latches stuck, and then it pulls it in, and then the other 9 latches click in, and when they took it apart, this is from Michael Collins taking it out, the probe, because they have to take it out of the way so it can go through there, and they have to put it all back, and they have to take it all out, and have to put it all back every time. But he's pulled it out, they found nothing wrong with it, and I don't even know that they think it was some kind of cleanliness thing. But I had a whole bunch of pictures there, but you know, we don't do that. So what they do is they do the translunar burn to throw them to the moon with the 3rd stage, and then they get the heck out. They pull the limb out, and they get the heck out of the way, and they go ahead and fire the 3rd stage to get it to go ahead of them, and it smashes into the moon, and they get to fly around it with the limb. So for this one, they went to go get ready to land, and they found out that this abort switch, which is makes the separation of the lunar lander and the support module, they make them separate, and it was clicking off by itself. And they're like, well, we can't have that because we'll be landing and it'll just, you know, it'll blast away and won't be able to land. So they had some spooky smart guy on the ground who figured all this out, and within a matter of like hours, he wrote the software and found a workaround where that wouldn't happen, but they could still use it. So that's fixed. So that's cool. So now this was actually before they started their landing. So now they're going on their landing, and they find out that their power descent's going on, and they have 2 computers, and they have to agree. And if they're close, they'll make them match up to make sure what's going on, because this one actually is being driven by a radar. But this one decides all of a sudden that it doesn't want to work. And so, you know, they're getting error lights, and that the radar's not working, they're not getting information. And if it doesn't work under 10,000 feet, they have to quit, they have to come back. So like, I don't know. But they kept going because they can use, there's some maps and stuff they can use out the window, they can tell where they're at, and they can tell their trajectory. So they kept going. And then here's the radar close up, because I like to show things twice. Anyway, so the landing radar wasn't working, and they said, well, let's just turn it off and on a couple times and see if it comes on, and it did. I'm like, ooh, big deal. So hey, we get to land on the moon today. Oh, and these lights up here, this tells them their altitude and their velocity. And there's literally a switch over there when they're going down. If they click it up, then it goes up a mile per hour faster, or whatever the unit is, or down. They can just click the 2 clicks twice, 1 foot per second, down foot. So, and that comes in quite handy. So now we're coming in. He did get to go fly it around a little bit to look for a better spot, which drove him a little lower on fuel. And I never heard the term fat as a goose before, but I'm assuming it means that they're quite pleased with their landing. So this is them on the ground, and I think this is Shepard back over here. And you see Shepard in the shadow. All right, so they're on the ground, they get out, they go doing a run around. We've got Red Stripe over here, Alan Shepard, he's holding the flag, and Ed Stewart's looking at a map because I think they're lost. These are one of the experiments that they deployed because we went there to go do more than just collect rocks and dust. Nice close-up picture of it, and it's got its own antenna where it can talk to Houston, Earth. And we got the flag going up, and it's lost, and he's wanting to find some of the directions. And so I don't think there's any subtle evidence yet, but there may be K marks because there's electric targets, because there's electric vehicles and they need charging stations. All right, so they have this cool thing to drag around because they don't have it drag around with them, and that's drag around is the right term. Equipment, modular equipment transport. And here's their trace walking around, and you can tell they're a bit lost because this is where they're trying to go, and they get within 100 feet of it and they can't see it because it's a hole. Oh, who sees that as a hole? Who sees that as a dent? If it's a mountain, raise your hand. If it's a hole in the ground, raise your hand. If you think I'm crazy, raise your hand. Every hand. All right, so they're out here walking around with this thing, and they decide that it's actually much easier just to carry it because it doesn't roll very well, and it doesn't really weigh that much. So they're like going up some hills and stuff, and they just like carry it. Kind of wandering around. I don't think his map reading skills are the greatest in the world. Anyway, so that was a problem. They didn't find it. They gave up. They're like, we've been looking for this for 2 hours, and nobody has a map that works, and the geologists were not happy at all. But anyway, in any event, this is their moon wheelbarrow. You can see tires just didn't work very well. So I'm going to stop there and come back. So they decide to play a little golf. Why not? On the moon? Nobody's heard about golf, right? So he decides to throw a drive. It might have been the golf handle. So they just brought the head of the 6-iron and they used another piece of equipment, so they didn't have to bring that much. But they are definitely the longest driven golf ball on the moon. It didn't really go that far. Looks like the javelin beat him. But one of them he kind of stubbed, so he went and got it and hit it again, so that's the first moon mulligan as well. First mulligan. Alrighty, so Rosen, on the way back, he says, hey, you know what, I got permission from a bunch of people to bring all these seeds on board, and they're back here fiddling around in this support module. And so he went out there to go get them back. So that's pretty cool. So, and these seeds on the way home germinated, and now they are moon trees, and they are spread across the country, and you can go see a moon tree someplace. This one, I think, is on Oregon, that's where it is. All of the rest of the missions started taking seeds with them too. If he can do it, we can do it too. So, no problems coming in. Didn't have, this is where I talk about all my seed stuff. No problem landing, everything went great. Here's the module if you want to go see it. Kitty Hawk at Kennedy Space Center. This is my picture. And there's some moon rocks in there, and a couple of moon rocks and all kinds of stuff there. It's at the Saturn V complex, so you can go see that. And so we're going to jump on to 15. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, all right. So 15, we've got Dave Scott, the prankster, and Al Wharton and Jim Irwin, and their vehicles are Endeavor and Falcon. And that's a big picture. Dave's the red stripe guy. He's the commander, and he's going to go down with the LIM module pilot, James Irwin, and Al Wharton's got to stay upstairs and play with the trees. So they bring along this, the first time they bring along this little cart. Now what really happened in there is that they figured out how to make the first stage lighter, because when they first started they couldn't do that, they were drilling holes with toothbrush to gain weight. But they figured out how to make it light enough where they could add some extra fuel and some extra weight for the first stage, and so that allowed them to bring
Designed to be folded to fit into a stage. Once on the moon, the astronauts would then unfold the rover via a series of ropes and pulleys. Here is some footage.
So that's about 10 minutes long, so I didn't really want to play the whole thing. Well, this is actually 4-wheel steering, and the first front 2 wheels did not work. So but they like a back steer so we can still get around. But Elon Musk does not get the credit for the first electric vehicle in space, because this is it. So he doesn't get that. This camera on the front right here is controlled by Houston, so they can pan around and look at things, and that comes into play a few times later. And they can talk back and forth to the on orbit, to the command module, and to this blue thing way up here somewhere. There it is, there. And they brought back a bunch of rocks and they went out for EVA. Yes?
Are there any of the experiments or equipment that were taken up, used, and then left?
There are a lot of the experiments were taken up and left. The problem is that they all run off solar power and batteries. And so a day is 28 days, and half of that, 14 days, is light, and probably half of that's not great light. And so they quickly run out of electrical power, and the batteries at that day weren't really great for recharging, and so they didn't really last long. There is one that's a reflective mirror that they each put out, and so tonight if you want to go outside, we can shoot my laser. I use this joke. Yeah, I use the same joke. It's not funny twice. It wasn't funny once. So you can see Dave Scott here and Jim Irwin here, and there he is. And if you don't buckle yourself in these things, you fly out because you're bouncing all over the place. But they decided, let's go for a ride.
Rover, this is Houston.
That's the camera. It's looking at the dirt. So as Mr. Irwin was pointing out, when he was looking at his map, I don't see enough landmarks. I mean, you got this gray dirt over there, and some rocks, you got this gray dirt over there. And so they're basically on the way back, but we could be lost. And then Dave said, well, why don't we just follow our tracks back? Because they're the only tracks up here. So. And I think this is just a standard picture. But one of the things you can point out here, this is Falcon, that's the vehicle. And this mountain is like 2.5 miles tall, and that comes up later in Apollo 17, how tall they are. But really, really big spots. I don't think they tried to drive up there, so anyway.
Were they communicating directly with Houston or through the LS?
So they can do it both ways. On Apollo 11 landing, I pointed that out, that they lost communication with the Eagle as it was landing, and they went through Michael Collins back, and he was relaying stuff. But they've got those dish antennas. Once they get those set up, and there's one next to the limb, and there's one, they have pretty good communications. And Australia Parks, when we were in blackout, they would come back up. And so we had sites around the world. In fact, I think the British were listening, the Russians were listening. And we didn't put stuff in code at the time. Neither did they, by the way. But this is an experiment that Galileo proposed, that things fall under gravity, no matter their weight, the same way.
Well, in my left hand I have a feather. In my right hand a hammer. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that?
So after how many years they finally proved that Galileo was right. I think Alan Shepard with the golf balls was doing something similar, so I'm pretty sure that's how they justified that. So. All right, so this is Apollo 15, right? So had a little bit of a problem. They kind of landed, and one of the legs was in a kind of a crater and was not really stable. I talked to Mr. Metzger, Dr. Metzger, and he said the limit was 11 degrees, and this was at 11 degrees, and they're like, this is their launch platform. So they why are you doing that to me? Quit that. I'm over here, I'm not touching it. Anyway, they had no clue how they came up. Somebody said 15, somebody said 10, and they compromised and came up with 11. But they were also looking for a jack back here to kind of jack it up. I'm not sure that's true. Oh, yep, it does wiggle. See that wiggle again since I put so much time into it? And when they came into land, everything was great except for one of the parachutes didn't open. But it's kind of designed to do that, even though the last guy just got some stitches by a hard landing. But anyway, so no problem. Landed pretty close to the carrier. Everybody got a good show. You can go to Dayton and see the Air Force Museum. You can see this puppy. So that mission went pretty good, successful. Everybody made it back fine. Here's a nice bigger picture of the same thing. And there was something about Corvettes they were driving around for testing, mission testing, and everybody was wondering why they were driving around Corvettes. They might run into a Corvette on the moon or something like that. But it turns out that the local dealership was like leasing them to it for $1 a year, and they were getting all kinds of tickets and stuff that they weren't actually having to pay. They were pretty ornery at the time. And this is not the only set of them they had. There's some silver, gold ones too, which go for a lot of money if you have to run across them. All right, so we'll jump into 16 here. We got 2 more to go, and we're doing fine on time, I think. Actually running pretty quick, but that's fine. So we got our red striper here who flew on Apollo 10, John Young, and Tom Mattingly, who didn't fly on 13 because he had the German measles. Very good. These are all things that are going to be on the test. And we got Charlie Duke. He he's over here too. He was actually the Capcom guy on Apollo 11 that they were talking to, and he was in the picture, so he's the one that talks to the crew for that mission. All right, so they got, and they're going around the moon. It turns out that the command module nozzle on it won't steer. It's kind of bad for going home and for doing all kinds of other things. So if there was a contingency where the limb coming up from the ground couldn't quite get to the CM, they would have to use the, would not be able to rendezvous. They would have to take the CM and drive over it and meet up to make up that distance. So they've got to get this fixed. Again, we go calling those spooky smart guys who went into the software, rewrote some things around and figured out how to fly it without a gimbling engine with thrusters and all that stuff. This again tells you how high they are and the velocity, and there's some lights on here that actually tell you when you touch the ground. And so they're go, they're finally go, but there's 6-hour delay, and in order to hit the same spot, it's kind of a reach, because they have to basically go further on the ground. So they've got to change all the software programming to hit the ground too, so it's not just that. But they figure out a way to do it. And on the bottom, there's these probes, which you remember seeing them hanging on the bottom. When those touch the ground, the light comes on, the main engine cuts off, and it actually falls the last 4 or 5 feet. And this one on the audio is a big boom that hits the ground. They're very happy to be on the ground. They're basically shocked. Neil Armstrong said that he was more surprised on the Apollo launch that they launched, because many hundreds of times they had got into stuff and never went anywhere. So he was quite shocked when they actually launched, and this is basically the same thing going on. But they're very happy. These are the probes that stick out of the bottom that touch the ground. And it's because the engine nozzle, when it's sitting on the ground, is only like a foot off the ground. It's not very high. So they really want to cut it off as soon as they can. And it assures you will land. I think we got all that covered. And so let's get on to something.
So we decide to do the Moon Olympics. I decide to try to set the high jump record on the moon. And as I start to do that, I bounce a couple of times, and then I fall over backwards. And as I fall over backwards, fear strikes. If I split my suit open, I'm dead.
Kind of a little motivation not to do that anymore. I did mention they're made out of Kevlar, but he's got the backpack and everything on it. There's a lot of equipment in the backpack. That's all keeping him alive. He's got cooling, he's got electric monitoring for everybody things going on. They're looking at his heart, they're looking at his breathing, making sure temperatures are good, all kinds of stuff going on in that backpack, and he landed on it. So anyway, so the first thing we do is, okay, let's go take our flag salute and do it again. So we'll have Crippen do the same thing, only by now they've realized that their CG is, they got work that they figured that out jumping out. But he's also the first pilot of when the very first shuttle goes up, along with Crippen. I've worked with Crippen when I was at Kennedy Space Center, met him many times. So really, really cool guy. So, and this is him filming it. So I gotta show that too.
Off the ground, up north.
One more time.
There we go. Good.
Anyway, he didn't crash. All right, so we're running around the moon. We've finished everything else. So what do? Well, you put the moon buggy through as much stress as you can just for fun. He does have his seatbelt on. And we're going to ignore all this math stuff, because if we really wanted to do that, we could analyze the trajectory of all this dirt, and I could figure out what the gravity of the moon is, and then some people would have some trouble trying to figure out why it was faked, because that's kind of hard to do back then. Seatbelts, please. There were 3 days on the moon, and they brought back lots of rocks and dirt. Rocks and dirt. Gray rocks, gray dirt. Rocks and dirt.
4 minutes, one gun.
Remember, it's 4-wheel steering, so you can actually see that.
He's doing 24. And when he hits the crater and starts bouncing is when he gets his roof to tail. He makes a sharp turn. Hey, that was a good stop. Those wheels just locked. Mark off.
So they did this for about 4 or 5 minutes. I think it's boys with toys, something like that. But you can see how much he was bouncing. If he didn't have that seatbelt on, he was getting launched back up to the command module. So they decided to leave a few things. Charlie Duke left a picture of his family and some labels. But remember, this ground is like 200 and some degrees. You can already see it start to peel up. And then they left a plaque to some of the people who died in the space program. And they made this little aluminum thing. And the guy that made that started selling them like wherever he was, and he got in trouble for that. So shouldn't do that. There was a whole bunch of stuff about people taking stuff to the moon and bringing it back. And I was going to get into that. I'm like, let's not go there. So they all did it to some respect. Alan Bean put little pieces in his paintings. He's really selling stuff from the moon and making a profit off of it. Something about all this money paid by the American people. Anyway, let's not go there. But there's the picture. You can see it's already melting. So, All right, so we're on orbit, and you know, there's stuff back in the sim bay that they information. So the guy on orbit's taking all these pictures, and he's got some radars looking around, and he's mapping stuff, and all that data's in the back of the CM, so they've got to go get it. And so this is Young and Mattingly, and they're going back to go get that out. And so that went fine. No problems getting back to Earth. This is just a unique shot of them looking out the window to their parachutes opening.
We see the good space deployed, guys. Some helicopter are now all in the water. They will
Riding rooms.
endeavor to retrieve the parachutes as well as the apex cover.
Radar is up now 1 minute ahead of our post logistics schedule. Roger that.
So these guys, I am sure, I haven't asked them if I ever get an opportunity. I am sure when the parachutes opened and they felt the gravity and the pull of that kicking in, they're like, okay, we're gonna live. That's probably the first time they said that, because I think Neil Armstrong said he had about a 90% chance of making it, 90% chance of making it back safely, but only a 50% chance of going to the moon. All right, so this is at Air and Space Museum in DC, at the other one, probably downtown. And we're ready to go to 17. All right. So we got Gene Cernan. He flew on 10, and he's going to be the last man on the moon. And Schmidt here is going to be the second to the last man. Now Schmidt is actually a geologist, so he's a rock scientist, something like that. Okay, poor Joe. No, he came down. So Schmidt goes down with CERN, and so there's a lot about that. Ron Evans is going to stay up there and grow trees, or actually in this case mice, by the way. I'll talk about that in a minute. And America Challenger, and since it's the last one,
Apollo 17 is the culmination of a golden age of science spending and technology advancement. In many ways, it is the last ember of the optimism of the 1960s. This celebrated era, the capstone of a generation, is coming to an end.
We'll stand by for a final go from Norm Carlson, the launch vehicle test conductor. We have ignition. 2, 1, 0. We have a liftoff. We have a liftoff. Roger, Dana, looking great. Roger, all 5 engines. Okay, engines, what you got here, roll is complete. We are for Chief. This is Mission Control, Gene Cernan reporting, Lincoln County, City, launch vehicle, maneuvering at top altitude, everything looking good at this point. 17 is go. Roger, when you go. First stage looks good. Altitude 1.1 miles. Okay, 1 minute, 68 degrees. Intact. Every motion regulator intact. Okay. Stand by for landing. I'll get back to you. Okay, now hold on. First warning, where's the speed? Okay, 19. Now 41.
So they're already busy, as you can tell, and then you go back to Apollo 12 and everything, they were having to work at the same time. That was very, very stressful for everybody. So, I don't remember how that got in there. Oh, this was the one that was supposed to get in there. Yeah, this was the one.
And begins with separation of the command service module from the S4 payload.
So they have these panels that come off and kick off, and then here's them, and they have to turn. So they're on their way to the moon. They have to turn around and mate, and that's where they had the trouble mating with it 6 times. So this is them actually docking up, and this is all ice that was on the outside of the vehicle. When they hit the pyros to blow off the doors, all this broke loose, and that's what they're saying up here. Hey, look at all the ice! Look at all the ice! Look at all the ice! They come down eventually because the orbit is subterranean orbit is what I like to say. So if it keeps going, it's going to come back. So they do some corrections on the way to the moon to make sure they go to the moon. So they're all nicely docked up right there. It's the target for them to hit. And now the tunnel's clear, and that probe is now cinching up tight to make it airtight. Actually, you saw Michael Collins, when they do all that, they're in a space like it isn't airtight until they find out it is airtight. And this is Glenn, Gene Cernan out on, he's happy to be out there.
Oh my God! Unbelievable! Unbelievable, but is it right this time?
So you can't even look anywhere near the sun. It's incredibly bright. And when these guys say this stuff, realize that there's nothing being chopped out by the UV from the atmosphere. You're getting full spectrum, so everything's brighter, the moon's brighter. That's why when you go get a photography picture, they flood you with light so you get all the colors to pop out, that's what they're seeing everywhere. And they're seeing a lot of colors pop out from the gray dirt too. It's like, ooh, gray dirt, rock, rock. I looked through literally hundreds and hundreds of the NASA photos trying to find one that was not gray dirt and rocks. I found like 3. So it's not the moon, the Earth's up there. This is Schmidt.
I was rolling on the moon one day. In a very month of December, May, when much to my surprise, a pair of the eyes. Oh, it's just a neat way to travel. Isn't it great?
You can tell that obviously their adrenaline stuck up. When they landed on the moon, normally you would take a nap and they said, nope, we're going out. So they meet, I mean, you've been up for probably 2 days, not quite, but you haven't slept much at all. And they're like, no, let's just go ahead and go. And so they spent like a 12-hour day after that. It's like, we're here, we're gonna do it, we're having fun. And they're literally stuck in the high stimulation mode. And they're arguing because it's actually December, but the song is about May. So this kind of happened, anyway. Yeah, Gene Cernan ran into something. So first car wreck on the moon, they did a repair, then they started talking about it, and they used some procedures and took some stuff from here and there. That's probably the how to take off from the moon procedure. Anyway. So they got an award or an honorary membership to the American Body Society of America for fixing it on the moon, because they're the first one to do. And Allstate promptly sent them a bill. Excuse me, can I say that? Sorry. My favorite insurance company. So this is a little bit of the trace they ran around since they had a nice car and all over the place. And I'm just going to let you hear it from one of the astronauts.
Oh, hey! Wait a minute. Look, there is orange soil. I stirred it up with my feet. And it is! I can see it from here. It's orange. Where did I put my visor on? It's still orange. Sure it is.
So this is great orange, and very different from everything else. This is kind of what it looked like. It's actually from one of the meteors. I talked to my planetary scientist friend, and he said this is actually, it's like glass, so when the meteor hit and the lava flows and all that happened, it actually brought together the material to make it orange. And there's also green, there's green on the moon as well, only I've never seen any green other than this. So, these things right here, just for sake, they put those out so they can tell the color spectrum for the camera, so they can see what it's supposed to, even they're incredibly dirty. And they keep tripping over, by the way.
Okay, Donald. Good. Coming. Well, would you go over to help Uncle Donald, please? Really? And be advised that the switchboard here at MSC has been lit up by calls from the Houston Ballet Foundation requesting your services for next season. I sure hope so.
He's wanting to join the ballet. He's having a hard time. I played a little bit of this one earlier, but when I saw the scene, I thought it would be fun. So this rock is kind of important because when it landed, it covered up everything below it to keep it from getting more dust on top of it. So what's underneath it is very old, and what's on top of it is from that time forward. So now they've got a nice little slice there, so they're trying to get stuff on it. And I'm pretty sure he wants to bring this rock home, which Gene Cernan will not let him do that. It's just a little big there. Okay. So I'll let you tell him tell it to you.
The experience is going to be more than you ever anticipated.
He's still alive.
And it was that way for me to get onto the moon. That seen this valley of Taurus Littrow, which is deeper than the Grand Canyon, as a matter of fact. Mountains to 6,000 and 7,000 feet above you on either side of the valley, all silhouetted against a black sky with brilliantly illuminated mountain slopes. And the Earth, of course, in one spot above the southern part of the Massifs. That all was a new experience, of course. And you can't, you can hear people talk about it, but you can't absorb it until you're there.
Sorry, we have to go there now to actually see what he's talking about. But that scene you saw, it was digitally created, but they took a bunch of pictures and glued them together, and then they did some stuff to clean them up and turn them. But I figured you'd want to hear from him since he's still around. But that's him dancing up there in the middle over there. I think Cern's behind the rock here. All right, so on the front of the LIM, people ask this one, is how they get this picture. On the front of the rover, there's a camera, and the guy that runs the camera is a second delayed, and so he can't point the camera. He's missed twice with the other two rovers, and he's going to give it one more shot to see if he can do it, follow it. But he has to predict where it's going to be.
1, ignition. Houston, vector good. Ag side. Good order. I hear you, that's right.
So he did pretty good on that one, I think. So that was pretty cool. All right, so this is them in orbit, and just to show you what they left behind, this is the launch pad, launch platform, which is the lower part of it. Anyway, so you can see some of the buckling on the outside from all the stress. This is really not a heavily structured vehicle. We're talking like maybe a little thicker than an aluminum can. They were actually worried about them kicking a hole in the side if they had a nightmare in the middle of their sleep, like, oh, balloon. And here's the doors that go in here, and the windows, and that's Cernan right there in the side of the door. So landing module, ascent module. And so one of the things they were doing, because they wanted to get some seismometer to work, and there's no activity, they want to find out what's inside the moon. So they kind of laid it, I mean, this seems like right out of Body Snatchers or Invasion or something, where they come to your planet and they lay out bombs everywhere and try to destroy you. So they laid out material, and I'm terribly sorry. Okay, it was 12 o'clock at night. I had something to do. So boom, no boom. No boom, no air, no boom. Well, the boom happened, but there's no boom, boom noise. So very big. All right. So we've got to go back out to go to our science bay and see what's out there. And this one happens to have some mice. Something tells me, since we had something on the Space Lab called a rat dispatcher, which was not made in France, maybe. Anyway, so he went out to go get the mice that were out there, and they went and got all the data and everything else that they'd been taken. And they did notice that when the module landed, there was a big cloud of dust come up, and I mentioned that earlier, that they actually got the command module on orbit, because it actually goes back in orbit, kind of sandblasts us a little bit, but it only lasted about 4 hours.
Beautiful. We had a beautiful television show. Really beautiful.
Red stripe, sorry. So this is in. All right, so we're going to come in. We've made it back. We're going to do our final landing. Let Gene Cernan talk. Come on, talk.
And as we leave the moon at Taurus Littrow, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return. With peace and hope for all mankind.
So some of you younger people in here are going to have to figure out how to get us back into this mode. This is it in Houston, so you can go visit that one. And I have time for a few questions, but I think I may need a couple of volunteers in a minute. And I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to give out photos, but whoever the two volunteers are, they're the ones going to tell me who won, because I need to be somewhat unbiased. So we'll do a question or two first, and we got about maybe a few minutes here. If I ask too many questions, they start getting really political. We don't want to do that, do we? Not at all. All right, who has a question here? So right now, the questions are they planning on going back to the moon? Right now, there's an Artemis program going on. I'm not thinking it has a lot of legs, but something of it will survive. This is supposed to go back to the moon. They have something called Gateway. It's going to be an orbit around the moon where they can, like a small space station, they can dock up and go there. But there's some inherent problems with how expensive and whether they can actually do it or not. So that's an issue that they're gonna work out, so.
Question to the right.
I'm coming, wait, are you the one on my right? Oh, that right, okay.
Since they can't walk up when they're low and they're practicing here, why can't they do that low?
It isn't really a problem for them to walk, because, so the question is, since it's difficult, why can't they redistribute their load? They're making all kinds of new kind of spacesuits with different things, but eventually it ends up a lot of weight to it, and it's gotta go somewhere, and it's gonna, this is probably wrong, but who's been pregnant? Was your CG off? Did you run into things? My wife, the doors used to open first before she got there. But you know, it changes your center of gravity. I lost like 75 pounds pretty quick one time, like 2 years ago. And my CG was off for about two months after that. I'm like, I'm really stumbling. So they're working on ways, like Elon's got some much skinnier student. Who's my right person over here? So the question was talking about the tires. The ones on the lunar module were basically screened to be as light as they possibly could. The ones on the wheelbarrow were not working. Let's just put it that way. They weren't working well. All right, okay. Not a difficult question. Oh, wait, before I even look back there, who's gonna be my helper here? You stand up and look that way.
You still got one question.
Well, I've got one up there of my own. You stand up and look that way. All right, find out who gave the answer to who something about the first mulligan on the moon. Okay, you two agree, you have to pick who gets it. Okay, yeah, you can write down there. So, all right, we'll do one more here. Yep, Alan Shepard, 14. All right, first car wreck on the moon. Okay, we got one over here. There you go. This is much easier for me. All right, if you're terribly distraught that you didn't get a picture, I mean like terrible, come talk to me. All right, so we'll go ahead and ask a couple more questions. I got a couple more pictures. Let me get back
There's
here.
one over here.
Excuse me, sorry about that. Occupational hazard.
Sir, what kind of advice would you give our young people about being involved in the space program?
So the question is, what would I tell young people about the space program? I really, from a young age, really just got into building things and taking things apart and just learning how things work, which really has engineer written all over it. My dad worked out there. So if you really like that kind of thing, then you're really gonna have, because I had to do a lot of work, you're gonna have to get caught up on math, know algebra, and just go ahead and plan on getting into the calculus series as quick as you can, because engineering day 1, calc 1, physics 1, chemistry 1. That is like an incredible washout class. So try not to even do that. You know, don't take one of those, because 2 of those are murder. And I mean, that's like, I spent 5 hours class hour for every hour I was in calculus. And it's a 5-hour course, so I spent like more than an average work day. Anybody over here got a question? Okay, then I'll ask. I won't be with you. All right. So you can, one of you a runner, and then I'll ask another question. What's your question?
Is there any serious talk about modifying a shuttle orbiter to orbit?
Okay, is there a serious conversation going on about taking one of the orbiters and making it go around the room? No. The technology has increased so much as far as heat tiles, as far as weight, as far as carbon fiber, things that have lightened the payload. It's a whole other game, and they really don't need all of that. They do have one I showed last week called the X-34, which looks kind of it, and they've got one called Dream Chaser, which is a smaller, much smaller orbiter kind of vehicle that comes in and land. So we'll see how Dream Chaser does. If you put that on top of a Falcon Heavy, you probably can get to the moon. But there's more than that. You've got to have enough commodities on there to keep somebody alive. All right, so I'm going to give you my next question. We already did the car wreck, right? Gene Cernan. Gold medal on the moon.
Yep, you
Somebody's-
got it.
Where's
I hear.
where's my crew here? You
I
guys are
heard
supposed
it.
to be telling who's answering this. First gold medal on the moon. It was in the Olympics.
He said it right here.
Okay, who back here?
Francis said
I'm
it.
gonna go to the back because I catch the front.
Francis said it, I
What was
heard
it?
it. The high jump.
So we're gonna go with high jump. And the javelin was the second gold medal, but that was into the Olympics pretty quick there. It was actually Charlie Duke on the mission before where he did a high jump, but I take wrong answers.
Give him a picture too.
Last one. Stitches. Did I just say that? Al Bean, is this the winner over here? All right, I'm gonna give you some red dirt. There's no actual dirt in this picture. It's just a picture of dirt. It's an actual picture of dirt on the movie that just take it from the ground. All right, so I got a couple more questions and I'm gonna cut it off. Let's see. All right. Got-
That's probably gold. They use gold for a lot of
See, I told you they start turning
It's
political.
probably a gold
So the question is, will it be private or commercial to get the first people back to the moon? Or Mars.
Is that part of the
Elon Musk really wants to go to Mars. That's what he's gaming for. I was talking to somebody the other day about, he's got a buddy that he's trying to do stuff like go out. He has a buddy who paid for half the rocket, and Elon paid for the other half, and they took a Dragon way out about 800 miles, which is the furthest anyone's been in space since the Apollo program. And they also flew over the pole, so that's 2 missions. These guys are going to get together and fly around the moon because that's the kind of people they are. I don't see them running out of money real quick. So it'll end up being something joint. You know, NASA will get on board, and it'll be something. They still have an astronaut corps. I would like them just to go back. They should take my advice, right? I would like them to focus on the scientific missions and the planetary missions and leave the launch stuff now to somebody else. Because it's way too political, and you know, you can help, you obviously are going to pay for stuff, but that's probably the right answer. Here, get that to him. And the gray shirt, and then I'm going to
You're out of time.
think about one more question I'm going to try and come up with.
Suppose that if you lived in a bubble town on Mars, you could hold your breath and walk out from one to another and go back in. You think that's in your
So the real question is, if you were in a bubble on Mars and you wanted to go to another bubble that you could just dart across. So I think this was in the movie 2010, 2001, where he didn't have a helmet on, he had to get in. So you could actually live for, in the order of maybe 1 or 2 minutes, like we talked about for Mars the other day. It's 2 minutes on Mars. It's basically how long you're. But with no air pressure, your body's going to start to boil. But that's going to take a little bit. So you're not going to run out of oxygen quite fast if you hold your breath. But you're going to instantly be, so, and it's cold. You would survive longer than you wanted to. That's a pretty good answer. All right, let me think here for a second. I did this one the other day, so I'm not going to do that again. Let me think about that one. Maybe I'll do it this time. All right, that's all I've got for right now. Thank you for coming. My next show is